Good afternoon and welcome again to part 2 of the Crowdfund Birmingham series. My name is Sammy Morja. I'm broadcasting live this afternoon from Crowdfunder HQ in Cornwall. Oh, bear with me, sorry. So what we're going to do first of all is start with a quick recap of what we focused on last time. So we were very much focusing on planning your project. We looked at making the plan, the kind of skills that you might need at the different roles to fulfill your crowdfunding project. We also looked at finding your crowd and nurturing your crowd. And that was all covered in that first session. So if you did miss that session, there'll be a link beneath this video on YouTube where you can go back and watch that. And I'd also recommend that you download the first pack, the guide on planning your project as well. So today, more specifically, we're going to be looking at creating your project. Again, there's a downloadable PDF guide that goes alongside this step, and there's absolutely packed full of really useful stuff on all of these elements and some bonus bits as well. So we're going to be focusing on telling your story. So how to write about it and how to use images in your project description. That's the big bit of space that you have on your Crowdfunder project page. And we're also going to be looking at videos, what kind of things to think about when you're making a video. We're going to look at rewards, the kinds of things that you can offer to your supporters in return for their pledge, and also how to set a realistic target. Okay, so we're going to start off first of all by having a look at a project which crowdfunded back in June of 2015. So let's head over to the live site quickly and have a look at this project page. And I definitely advise to anyone to jump onto Crowdfunder and have a look at some past projects to get a bit of a better idea of what kind of thing you can do on there. So this one is called Ensuring the Growing at Growhampton Can Continue. So as we scroll down and we have a look at their project page, we can see that they've got a really great 3-minute long video. Definitely have a play of that and have a look at how they present a story. They've got really strong text, bold titles, great images that very much reflect the ethos and the style of what Growhampton's all about. They've got testimonials there. They've done that in a really fun way with these little chicken graphics. And as you keep on going through the page, you can see that there's a little bit of image and a bit of text on show at all times, and they really do guide you through that story with those subheadings. To finish it off, they've got a really fantastic call to action where they're saying thank you and they're giving you lots of things to do as well as a supporter. And of course, they've made it quite fun there, having a picture of the chickens. Now, as we scroll back up the page, you can see all of the rewards on the right-hand side. You can see how many people pledged on each reward. So, for example, 31 people on the £5 reward, 75 people on the £10, and you can see what kind of things they were offering. So it gives you, again, a really great insight into how they ran this project. So thinking about your own project now, we're just going to jump back in to that for a moment. So first up, it's figuring out how you're going to tell your story. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? And we're not just thinking about, okay, you're trying to build something, or you're trying to create something. It's more than that. What is it that that building or that creating is actually going to achieve? What are the outcomes? What's going to be the ripples and the after effects of what it is that you're doing? What is it that makes your project great? And you can actually swap that word great for quite a few other words. What makes it exciting, unique, interesting, groundbreaking, innovative, whatever it is that's relevant to your project and to your crowd. So what is it that makes it stand out? And finally, who are you and what's your experience? And this is one that often people do leave out. What you're doing here is not only adding credibility in telling people about who you are, what kind of experience you might have with this kind of thing in the past, so they know that you're trustworthy, you're the right person for the job to deliver this project and make it happen. But you also add an element of humanity to the project. I think there's the phrase, people fund people rather than projects. It's very much about that personal connection. So figure out what your hook is and how are you going to connect it and make it relevant to your crowd. Now, of course, also with your description, you can add in some visual texture. So we're looking for images, bright, bold photographs. We're looking for infographics, perhaps, and perhaps you have maps as well, or there's an interesting way of you showing some data. Again, we really want to see other voices on your project page as well. It not only helps with that credibility in saying, it's not just me who thinks this is a great idea, actually, lots of other people in my community do as well. But it actually also adds very much a sense of community and a sense of sort of social proofing and support to your project when you've got other people who are backing you up and saying, yeah, I think this is really great. Again, linking back to our earlier point, do show people who you are, particularly if you've got a team there. We want to see happy, smiley faces. We want to see real human beings. And do format your story in a way in which makes sense with headings. We don't want to see really big chunks of text, lots and lots of paragraphs. Use headings to sort of guide people through to what exactly it is that they're reading about in each section. So the first thing I'm going to say on adding a video to your crowdfunding project is that you don't need to. It's not essential. So if any of you are suddenly panicking and thinking, that sounds like a nightmare, I really don't want to do that, I wouldn't know where to begin, you don't need to do one. You can crowdfund without a video. But what I would say is that those projects who do have videos tend to do better. They tend to be the stronger projects. If you can do a video, I definitely recommend it. It doesn't need to be a Spielberg production. It doesn't need to be a huge endeavor. Even just shooting something with a camera phone is absolutely fine. There's no need to make it overly complicated. We want it to be really short. I'd say 2 minutes is really the absolute maximum. And do keep an eye out for sound quality. That's one of my top tips. It may seem like a really good idea to shoot your video on a gorgeous beach, but actually if all we can hear is the waves crashing and the wind in the background or someone selling ice creams, we're not going to be able to hear what it is that you're saying. There's lots more information, advice, and actually examples as well of videos in that pack that I mentioned earlier. So do have a look there if you're thinking about doing a video. So rewards then, and this is one of the areas that we get asked about the most. And the first thing that I will say on rewards is they're not essential again. We do accept donation-only projects on Crowdfunder. We see more and more of those coming through. So if you think that rewards aren't relevant to your project, that you don't need to add them, that's absolutely fine. And what I would say is those projects with rewards, they tend to find that their average pledge is actually that much higher. So it's usually around about £50 for projects with rewards, whereas it's around about sort of £11 for projects with donation, and that's kind of across the board. So something to bear in mind anyway. We've identified here 4 sort of main types of rewards, if you like. And often it's those projects that think, we don't have a product, we don't have something really obvious we can give away, that get stuck on this. And that's because they're only thinking of this number 1, products and services. Actually, one of my favorite things is number 2, is experiences and events. So putting on a masterclass, putting on a party, an opening event, something where people can come along and get involved with what it is that you're doing. They're really great ways for you to actually connect with that community, particularly if it's a very local project, if it's based in a specific location. That kind of thing actually works really, really well. Not only for sort of fostering those relationships, but it's a really good way of you delivering something that's worthwhile to your supporters without, costing you guys the earth as well. So that's something to bear in mind. Any rewards that you do want to offer, make sure that they're good quality and they're good value for money, and they're going to give your supporters something authentic and something worthwhile in return. So let's have a look then at some examples. So this one is actually a reward that I have on my bookshelf at home. It's a copy of a book called Back Dogs Forever Home. The project was actually to get that book published. And what I got in return for my £10 was a signed copy. So that's a really simple, straightforward reward, a very simple exchange. Next up for £250, so definitely at the higher end, we have this reward from the Arran Bakery. And again, I definitely recommend having a look at their project. They funded just earlier this year. So you get an artisan baking lesson for 2, so you get that experience. You also get the lunch, which is a product in itself, as well as an experience, along with a tote bag to take your bread home in, so something that's going to last for much longer. And finally, to really kind of seal the deal, you also get your name on their benefactors list, which is going to be up in the bakery for everyone to see. Because it ticks a lot of boxes, that's a particularly strong reward. That's a really good one. And finally, a bit of an example of a corporate or sponsorship reward. So this one is from Herne Hill Velodrome. So again, do have a look at their project. For £2,000, this was very much aimed at bosses of corporates nearby. So it was up to 20 people can come along on a track day and also get this limited edition kit bundle. It's very much targeted at those corporates. Obviously, you and I don't usually have sort of a spare £2,000 floating around that we want to just sort of take 20 people away from. So this one was very much targeted towards those groups, and it worked really well. So let's briefly have a think about target. Now, there are actually 2 targets, of course, that you need to set. You have how much you want to raise, and then you have the amount of time in which you want to raise it in. Now, in terms of how long you should be crowdfunding for, you can actually go up to 8 weeks on Crowdfunder, but we wouldn't usually advise that most projects do that. Usually, the optimal amount of time is around about 4 to 5 weeks. And there's a reason for that. It gives you enough time to really build up some momentum, to get the ball rolling, start building a bit of a crowd, without sort of running out of steam, running out of things to say, and essentially, talking about the same thing for what is essentially a sixth of a year, which makes it sound like a really long time when you call it that. It's a bit of a misconception that more time means more money. In reality, short and sharp works better. If more time meant more money, then Red Nose Day would be every day. Something to think about. So in terms of setting your target, how much money you want to raise, there's a couple of ways of looking at this. How do you have a realistic target? What you can do is use these sums based on what we know happens on average across the platform. So first up, we know that the average pledge, the average amount that people contribute is £50, okay? We also know that 1 in 20 people who look at your project will probably go on to make a pledge. So if you look back at your network map that we made in that first session, and you count up how many people you've got on there, you then know that 1 in 20 of them will probably make a pledge, and that they'll probably pledge £50. So it's quite an easy sum for you to do. You don't have to be an expert mathematician to start working out what might be a realistic target. And you can do it back the other way as well. You can take the amount that you need to raise, you can divide it by 50. That tells you how many people need to make a pledge. And then you can multiply that by 20, and that tells you how big your crowd needs to be, how many people you need to look at your page. So you can do it one way or back the other. Do, of course, bear in mind when setting targets that there are fees that you'll need to pay when you crowdfund. There's a 5% fee on Crowdfunder plus VAT. And there's also some fees from payment providers, depending on which payment options you go for. Of course, if there's any costs that you're going to incur on delivering your rewards, do make sure you've considered that as well. And that should together help you to come up with the right target. So you have 2 funding methods to choose from on Crowdfunder. First up, we have all or nothing. Does exactly what it says on the tin. You have to reach your target in the allotted time in order to get the money. If you don't reach your target, if you fall short, then no money actually moves anywhere. Your supporters, they won't be charged. There's no fee to you. You don't sort of lose anything monetarily. It's just your time and your energy, really. The other option is flexible funding, which is basically keep what you raise. So whatever amount is pledged at the end of your time period, you keep it all. Doesn't matter if you've hit your target or not. So people sometimes ask it at this sort of stage, why do people go for all or nothing, or why do you choose flexible funding? Now, flexible funding, or keep what you raise, is good for charities or community groups where any amount of money is going to be put to good use, and perhaps they're crowdfunding more to kind of market themselves and connect with people in their community. So it doesn't really matter if they raise the whole amount or not. That's absolutely fine. For the vast majority of projects, all or nothing is really the best option. It's absolutely the strongest motivator for you, your team, and also your crowd. People are very much driven towards making sure that you hit your target if they know that this thing is only going to happen if you do reach it. And of course, they're only going to get their reward if you do reach that target. It's also worth noting that you do need to be on the all or nothing funding method to be eligible for the Improving Life for Londoners Fund, and also for the Crowdfund Birmingham Fund. And quite a few of the other funds on Crowdfund. So do have a look and check that, because it might be that's part of the criteria if you are looking at extra funding. Finally, it's worth me saying that flexible funding shouldn't really be used as a safety net if you think that your target is too high. It's not a really good way of thinking about it. If you don't think that you're going to realistically reach your target, I'd say let's have a look at that instead. Let's review your target. Let's have a look at nurturing your crowd or growing your crowd so that we think it is a realistic target, so that you are confident, as I say, rather than using flexible funding as a safety net. Okay. So now you're ready to start crowdfunding. You're definitely ready to start working on your project page. If you haven't already, do click that Start Crowdfunding button on the Crowdfunder homepage. That is the only way that you can really start to see what it is that you need to add in, and how it is, that the system works, how it looks when you start working on a page. So do that. If you have any questions at all along the way, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Sammy Morger. You can also pop us an email, support@crowdfunder.co.uk, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Our next session is going to be all about running your project. That's going to be at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the 21st of June. And what we're going to be looking at in that session, we're going to be looking at the strategy behind launching a really strong crowdfunding project. We're going to be looking at different communication tools, why you might use them, what the different options are for you. And we're also going to be looking at how to interpret the data on your live project dashboard. So I'll very much look forward to seeing you then. Thanks. Bye.